I've been married to my wife for 7 years, together for almost 10. On paper, we looked solid, shared routines, inside jokes, a small circle of friends, and plans that always started with next year. I trusted her in that lazy, unquestioned way you only trust someone when you think the hard parts are behind you. The first signs didn't come as explosions. They came as tiny shifts. Her phone never left her hand. She laughed differently, sharper, almost defensive. She started snapping at me over nothing: how I chewed, how I parked, how I asked simple questions. When I tried to talk about it, she brushed me off, said I was imagining things, said work was stressful and I was being needy. I wanted to believe her. I told myself every marriage has dry spells, that moods change, that love isn't always warm. Still, something felt off, like living in a house where the lights are on but nobody's really home. I didn't know yet that this discomfort was the beginning of everything falling apart. After that uneasy feeling settled in, the inconsistencies started stacking up fast. She suddenly had late meetings twice a week, always unplanned, always urgent. Her gym bag stayed in the car, untouched, yet she swore she'd worked out. When I asked how her day went, her answers were vague, like she was reciting lines instead of memories. She also became weirdly territorial. If I reached for her phone to check the time, she'd snap it away like I'd crossed a line. Passwords changed. Notifications silenced. She accused me of being controlling when all I did was notice the distance growing between us. The strangest part was how mean she got. Not angry, mean. Eye rolls, sarcasm, little jabs designed to shut me down. It felt like she needed me smaller, quieter, so she wouldn't have to explain anything. I still didn't have proof. Just that sinking certainty in my gut, the one you ignore because facing it would mean admitting your life might not be what you thought it was. The night that really stuck with me was a Tuesday. She said she'd be home by 8. At 10:30, she still wasn't back. No texts. No calls. When I finally reached her, she sounded annoyed, not apologetic, like I was interrupting something important. She said her phone died, which didn't make sense because I could hear traffic and music in the background. When she got home, she didn't look tired. She looked wired. Her hair was done differently, her perfume stronger than usual. I asked where she'd been. She snapped that she already told me and accused me of interrogating her. Then she flipped it on me, said my paranoia was ruining the marriage. I apologized. That's the part that still messes with my head. I apologized while she went to shower, humming like nothing was wrong. I stood in the kitchen feeling stupid, telling myself I was overthinking, even though every instinct in me was screaming that something had just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. A few days later, I noticed her old tablet in the drawer. She hadn't touched it in months. I wasn't snooping at first, I just needed a charger. When I turned it on, it synced automatically. Messages popped up before I could even process what I was seeing. There were texts from a name I didn't recognize. Not flirty right away. Familiar. Casual. Too comfortable. Then I scrolled. Inside jokes. Complaints about me. Lines like, "I can't wait until he's out of the house again." My hands started shaking. I felt cold and hot at the same time, like my body didn't know how to react. I kept hoping I'd find something that explained it away, some harmless misunderstanding. Instead, I found plans. Times. A photo of her smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. I put the tablet back exactly where it was. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed air, and I needed to know whether this was real or if I was about to blow up my life over something I didn't want to believe. That evening, she sat across from me at dinner, scrolling through her phone, barely touching her food. I watched her like a stranger, every movement suddenly suspicious. She told me she'd be working late again the next night. Same calm tone. Same lie. I asked, casually, who she was meeting with. She didn't even look up. Said it was a team thing. When I mentioned a name from her office, she hesitated just a fraction of a second, then snapped that I was being ridiculous. It hit me then how easy it was for her. The lies rolled out smoothly, like she'd rehearsed them. Meanwhile, my chest felt tight, like I was carrying a secret too heavy to breathe with. I nodded, played along, and hated myself for it. Later, she kissed me on the cheek before bed. It felt mechanical, like a habit she didn't bother to break. As she turned away, I stared at the ceiling, realizing this wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was betrayal happening in real time, and she had no idea I was already standing in it. The next day unraveled fast. She forgot the tablet was logged in. Around noon, another message came through. This one wasn't subtle. It was a joke about the night before, followed by same place tomorrow? My stomach dropped. I checked the timestamp. That was the night she claimed her phone died. The music, the traffic, the attitude, suddenly it all lined up in the worst possible way. I shouldn't have kept reading, but I did. There were voice notes. I didn't even finish the first one. Hearing her laugh like that, soft, intimate, alive, felt like getting punched from the inside. She never laughed that way with me anymore. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, realizing this wasn't a mistake or a phase. This was a second life she'd built while I was still showing up to the first one, clueless. And the scariest part wasn't the affair itself. It was how easily she'd erased me from her version of the story. I didn't wait for a perfect moment. When she walked through the door that evening, still in that work mode outfit, I asked her who he was. No build-up. No warning. She froze. Just for a second. Then she laughed, sharp and offended, and asked what the hell I was talking about. I told her I saw the messages. I told her about the tablet. Her face changed immediately, not guilt, not sadness, but anger. She accused me of invading her privacy. Said I was insecure, controlling, paranoid. She said the messages were jokes, that I was twisting things because I wanted drama. When I mentioned the plans, the times, the voice notes, she snapped that I was obsessed and needed help. The speed of it stunned me. No apology. No hesitation. Just denial layered on top of blame, like if she talked fast enough, reality would bend. I realized then that this wasn't going to be a confession. It was going to be a fight over whether I was allowed to believe my own eyes. I told her to stop. Just stop lying. I described the messages word for word, the dates, the places. Her confidence wavered. She crossed her arms, rolled her eyes, said I was taking things out of context. Then she switched tactics and admitted knowing him, but only as a friend. A coworker. Someone who listened when I didn't. When I asked why she deleted messages and hid her phone, she said she knew I'd overreact. When I asked why she complained about me to him, she said I drove her to it. Every answer was a pivot, a dodge, a way to make me the problem. Finally, I asked if she slept with him. She laughed again. Too quick. Too loud. Said I was disgusting for even asking. But she wouldn't look at me. That's when I knew the truth was sitting right there between us, unspoken, heavy, and she was willing to burn everything down just to avoid saying it out loud. I didn't raise my voice. I think that surprised her. I just told her I was done pretending. I said I already knew enough, and this was her chance to be honest. She sighed like I was exhausting her. Then she said it just happened. That it wasn't planned. That she felt lonely. That it didn't mean anything. Each sentence contradicted the last, but she said them with conviction, like repetition could make them true. When I asked how long, she gave 3 different answers in 5 minutes. When I asked if it was over, she said yes, then admitted she saw him that same week. She cried, but it felt performative, like she'd practiced those tears for a moment exactly like this. What hurt the most wasn't the confirmation. It was realizing how little respect she had left for me. She wasn't confessing to heal anything. She was confessing just enough to shut me up. While she was crying, her phone buzzed on the counter. She lunged for it. That single movement said more than any confession ever could. I grabbed it first. For the first time, she didn't fight me. She just went quiet. There was a message from him. Did he find out? That was it. The room felt too small. I felt stupid for every excuse I'd made for her, for every time I doubted myself instead of the obvious. She started yelling then, saying I was humiliating her, that I had no right to read that. Like privacy still mattered more than the wreckage in front of us. I handed the phone back and told her I was done. Not yelling. Not crying. Just empty. She asked what that meant, like she genuinely didn't understand consequences. In that moment, something inside me shut off, and I knew this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was an ending. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I paced the apartment, staring at walls, thinking about every laugh, every touch, every I love you that suddenly felt like a lie. Anger came first, hot, sharp, like I could burn the world down. Then sadness, crushing and slow, like someone had taken all the air out of the room. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and deeply, achingly alone. I went through the house, touching things that reminded me of us. Photos, gifts, little notes. Everything I had treasured now felt like evidence of being fooled. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the trust she had destroyed, the years she treated like they didn't count. By dawn, the anger had faded a bit, leaving a hollow ache. I realized I couldn't just stay in this haze forever. I had to decide, fight, leave, or collapse under the weight of what had happened. I spent the next week in a daze, replaying every interaction, every red flag I had ignored. I considered counseling, reconciliation, giving her another chance, but every scenario felt hollow. How could I rebuild trust when the foundation had been so thoroughly shattered? I also thought about staying for appearances, for fear of being alone, or for the sake of the life we had built. But every time I imagined pretending, I felt nausea, not comfort. Finally, I realized that whatever I chose, it had to honor my own dignity. I needed to reclaim myself, my peace, and my sense of reality. I couldn't stay in a relationship where my instincts were constantly undermined, and my heart was a target for deception. The decision was clear: I had to step away, not out of spite, but to survive emotionally and rebuild a life where honesty wasn't optional. I waited until we were both home one evening. She was scrolling her phone, humming like nothing had changed. I took a deep breath and told her I was leaving. She laughed. At first, I thought it was disbelief. Then it turned sharp, bitter. She accused me of overreacting, of being dramatic, of throwing away our life together. She tried to negotiate, promise change, and manipulate my guilt. I stayed calm. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply said that the trust was gone, and without it, nothing else mattered. The look on her face shifted from anger to shock to frustration. I could see the realization hitting her: she had lost control, and there was nothing left to salvage. When I finally packed my things, there was silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that comes when a wound is exposed and everyone knows it's permanent. The first few weeks after moving out were brutal. Every song, every street, every little habit reminded me of her. I cried more than I expected, not just for the relationship, but for the life I thought we had. Friends reached out, offering support, but I mostly wanted solitude. I needed to sit with the anger, the sadness, the disbelief. Slowly, I started reclaiming routines that were mine: running in the mornings, cooking without complaint, sleeping without dread. Therapy helped more than I anticipated. Talking to someone who didn't judge, who helped me untangle the emotions and separate the betrayal from my self-worth, was grounding. I realized that her choices didn't define me, they just forced me to see clearly who I was and what I deserved. Every day was small victories: a meal I made alone, a book I finished, a laugh that came naturally. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened, and I began to see that life after betrayal could still have light. Looking back, I can see how clearly the signs were there all along, and how easy it was to ignore them out of love and habit. I learned that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, no amount of excuses or tears can rebuild it unless both people are committed to honesty. I also realized that betrayal says more about the person who cheats than the person who is cheated on. I am not to blame for her choices. I am responsible only for my response, and I chose to protect myself, to step away, and to rebuild a life where I am respected. Now, months later, I'm stronger, more aware, and slower to ignore those gut feelings. I've learned to value honesty above comfort, and self-respect above appearances. If there's one piece of advice I'd give anyone in a similar situation, it's this: listen to your instincts, don't make excuses for someone else's lies, and never sacrifice your peace for someone who doesn't cherish it. It still hurts, but I can breathe again. And that feels like victory.